Welcome back to Leveraging Leadership, where we unpack the art of business leadership. I'm your host, Emily Sander, Chief of Staff turned Executive Leadership Coach. This show is all about finding your points of greatest influence and leveraging them to better serve those around you. Hey, this is a quick note from Emily in the future. The guest you're about to hear from is fantastic. Due to a security protocol, he had to take the interview from his car outside the military base he was on. So the audio and video, just for the first 8 minutes, is a little bit more choppy than normal, but after that, it evens out. But the content, the experience, the background, the story is fantastic. So I definitely wanted to share that with you. So without further ado, here is that conversation. Welcome back to Leveraging Leadership. Today's guest is Johnathan JDUBB Williams, and he has a long, fancy title, so let me read this to you. He is the Chief of Staff for the Joint Functional Component Command for Integrated Missile Defense, a subordinate command to the U.S. Space Command. And before we dive in, a quick disclaimer, Mr. Williams is here today in his personal capacity. The views and opinions he shares are his own and do not represent the Department of Defense or its policies. With that, JDUBB, welcome to the show. It's very nice to see you again.
It's nice to see you, Emily. Thanks for having me.
Just to start out with, could you share a bit about your background and your journey to the Chief of Staff role at the Department of Defense?
Sure. So I joined back in 1998 as a naval officer. My designator was intelligence, and spent over 20 years holding positions of greater senior and responsibility throughout those years, from working fighter squadron as the intel officer to being an interrogator with SEAL Team 1 in Ramadi, Iraq. And then I came out here a space professional. There was a very small cadre of Navy officers that were space educated. And when Space Command was getting ready to stand up, I decided, well, I can retire or take this next step. And I took the next step, and I'm glad I did, because now I'm the chief of for JTF. Space Command is a graphic combatant command. It was around in the 80s, and then at 9/11, they started the U.S. Northern Command. Several years go by, and we realized our importance with space assets and the fight that may come in. All deals with a lot of that is in space, from satellites to communications. The simple thing from paying for gas at a pump or taking out cash at an ATM. It's all based in space. So Space Command is in charge. If you look up in the sky and you go 100 kilometers up, that's where their area ability starts. So that's technically space begins. Anything below that is U.S. Strategic Command. It's also separated geographically by other component commands, like the European Command obviously has EUCOM, has Europe. Central Command has the Middle East, the Pacific, of course, the Pacific. But the uniqueness of Space Command is that we are trans-regional. We go and we intersect every other command's area ability, and those are all chaired by 4-star generals or admirals. The Joint Functional Component Command for Integrated Missile Defense, a JFIC. The JFIC is responsible for integrated missile defense, where we take joint capabilities, development, we advocate for the warfighter, the operator that operates technology, and we make sure that those resources are shared across combatant commands. So if you picture a missile coming out of, say, Iran, and flying into 100 nautical miles above the Earth, and it's transiting, say, to the United States. It's going to go over CENTCOM. It's going to go over European Command. It's going to go into U and we need to make sure that all those pieces are connected and talking to each other, so that we can provide a defensive capability.
Gotcha. Yes, that would be good. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for what all of your colleagues do. Uh, Thank you for that explanation. And then in this case, who is your principal? So it's a general, not a CEO in this case, but can you talk a little bit about your chain of command there?
Sure. So my immediate chain of command goes from Lieutenant General Gainey. He's our Army general. He wears several hats. He's the Army for to strategic command for the Army's capabilities. He's also the U.S. Space and Missile Defense Center officer, and is also our commanding general. So he wears several hats. He's a 3-star. We have a deputy commander who 06, full bird colonel, and then there's the staff. We all report to General being a 4-star general who's in charge of U.S. Space Command. So we're doing his from the president, and the General Whiting at Space Command is charged with regional missile defense, which is what we do. And we do that on behalf of General Whiting because we have that capability. We have that expertise in-house.
And is General Whiting the one? I see. And is General Whiting the one who would present the defense proposal on to the president on behalf of what his subordinates have put together and what he's approved?
He has in some cases, and Lieutenant on uh, for the hat that he wears as JFA commander. So he
Okay.
testified in Congress just in April of 2024, wearing that.
I see. Okay, so you're supporting some very influential people, to say the least. Okay. Thank, thank, thank you for that context. That will be helpful to many listeners who are not as familiar with the military apparatus as you are. So when we first connected, you were going into this role, and we were talking about your first 30, 60, 90 days. And it sounded like there wasn't an official program or protocol for chiefs of staff. It was, I have this joint command, and I have to coordinate all of these different departments and divisions and directories. Go. And you had very good instincts and were able to put together a lot of pieces that brought transparency and visibility and open communication to the groups you were working with. But just, how did you get into the role of chief of staff, and what did your first 30, 60, 90 days look like?
So it was a competitive process. I applied through USA Jobs, and I had a real extensive interview with 4 senior officers, uh, and it was about an hour interview. And about a month after the interview, maybe 6 weeks, I got the job offer. So when I first got on board, typically in the military, when you show up, uh, some of the advice, whether it's good or bad, is to, hey, don't make any significant changes right away.
Yeah.
Right. Get the lay of the land, kind of see what's going on. Well, I needed to speed that up, because our mission is very important. I was coming in at the end of the fiscal year. So I wanted to make sure that I was in lockstep with Lieutenant General Gainey, and what he told Congress that he was going to do. And during my interview, I promised that that's exactly what I was intending to do. So when I got on board, I met with you can look at them as C-suite members. So I have 8 officers. They range from their joint service, military and civilian. They're all O6s or GS-14s. So I'm the senior civilian for the command. And I sat down with every one for about 45 minutes. I asked them to bring me their issues, give me the brief of what it is that their directorate is in charge of, the big issues they're having, the projects they're working on, and how I can help. And I asked them to just be candid with me, because I'm a very transparent um, type of leader. So I was able to speed up my 30-day assessment and make all those changes within my first few weeks, um, relatively easy and smoothly. And I got a huge, it did pay um, great dividends going forward. I'm working on my 90-day assessment now, and we've made significant progress. And the command is much better. I'm not saying that it's because of me; it's because I've allowed those senior officers to be autonomous, to have their authority over their directorate, uh, and have responsibility. So I don't want to micromanage them. They're very senior professionals, who've had 30 years like myself in the industry. So I need them to act that way. And it was a good relief that I did on their behalf, because they were very energized when I told them that, asked them to do that, and then I displayed it um, to them by giving them more things in their bailiwick, if you will, to do. I cut out a lot of meetings that were pointless, time consuming. Some meetings covered the same thing. So I created one staff meeting. It's every Monday, and it's the chief of staff sync meeting with all of my directors. And we go over the issues for the week, from personnel to computer issues to future projects to uh, integration with foreign partners or other combatant commands. It runs the gamut. And we sit in there for an hour. It's very process driven, very streamlined and efficient. And it's proved fruitful for the command.
Yes, and along with the one-on-ones you did and the resyncing of meetings, streamlining those, I wanna call out and highlight a few other things you did, which you first of all took the session the general had with Congress and said, "Here's the mandate. Here's the overall, what we're supposed to be driving towards,"
Yes, ma'am.
and repurposing what was said there into, "Here's what we're driving after. Here's the objective."
Mhm.
And then, you also took that 30-day assessment that you provided to the general, and you pushed that to the entire command
I did.
so they could see what you had said, and I think that was the first time that had ever happened?
It was the first time. So when I got on board, I was asking random employees, "Hey, what do you think our mission is? What do you think your contribution to our mission is?" And people had a huge sort of, well, they were very disjointed in what they thought they did, who they did it for, and what sort of um, interaction they had, and what their participation was. What their piece of the pie was. Um, So I read General Gainey's testimony to Congress. I itemized it, lined it out, like as you saw. Um, and I told the command that, okay, here's me. This is my leadership style. And these are the things you're going to see me get after right away. So I sent that to the entire command. The general really liked it. And the command appreciated it, because they were like, everyone was on the same sheet of music going forward. They're like, okay, we know why he's here. We know why he's making changes, because the general promised Congress that he would. So I just put those into action, and it worked out great. We've made huge strides uh, in almost my 90-day mark. That I mean, 100% in some areas, 60, 75% in many others. It's been phenomenal. But that transparency from senior leadership is invaluable. If you I'm that type of leader that says if I'm going to do something and I put it in writing, I do it. And everyone was very appreciative of that. And it's to this day, it's still running full steam.
Mhm. And then what's your approach to collecting feedback ongoing, right? Because it's a dynamic, evolving, kind of living process where you wanna make sure you're transparent in terms of letting the teams know what the commander's intent is, in this case, a real commander, a real general, what the commander's intent is so they understand, and then also feeding up relevant, helpful information to leadership that the people, on the front lines know, and they just have a different level of access to or different perspective on. How do you gather that feedback and convey that?
Uh, so I'm very mobile as a leader. I like to get out and talk to the people that I'm working with in their workspace. Uh, I try to keep it very informal so that they're able to talk to me. A lot of people will say, "Sir," "Yes, sir." But the people that have like a long history in the military or near me, when I moved here in Colorado Springs on active duty in 2018, and a lot of people stay here because it's beautiful. Um, they'll call me JDUBB, and I ask people to call me that because that feedback is important to me on where they think they are, what they think is going on, um, if it's working or not, or if there's a better way to do it. So I'm constantly in that environment, putting my employees in that environment, and then I write a report every Monday. I don't know if I showed that to you, but it's usually the notes that I take during my chief of staff meeting, and I'll tell the general exactly what is being said in the command. So there's no guesswork. Everybody knows from the general down to my IT tech. Um, everybody knows what everybody's thinking and doing and working on, and you can just take that document and walk across the building to another section and integrate yourself with whatever it is that they're doing because a lot of the pieces overlap, and they're able to see that now.
And with that summary snapshot from the Monday chief of staff meetings, what else, just in general, for you being chief of staff to General Gainey, what does he need from you to do his job effectively?
So he needs me to make sure that the staff uh, is cohesive. They're operating as one unit. They're communicating openly with each other. That they're integrated, um, and that's where the transparency, my 60, 30, 60, 90 day assessment, my weekly um, chief of staff sync notes that I give to the command and to the commander. Everybody sees what everyone else is doing. And for the first time, this command's been around for 20 years. And for the first time, a lot of these employees that have been there for that long said it's never been this way. And that's not due to me. It's just I learned throughout my career that if you know what the boss wants, you don't have to guess. And you're usually right the first time. And in our missions, you don't have the luxury of a lot of time because a lot of things are wanted right away from Congress or from the Secretary of Defense or the president. And you constantly have to be on your toes for that. Um, and that takes an entire team to do. And that's what General Gainey needs for me ultimately is to make sure that the team, I got the proper lineup, everybody's fielded and has practice and warmed up and is ready to play the game every single day. And that's what I try to do.
I like I love that analogy that they're warmed up and ready to play at any moment. Because if the Secretary of Defense or the president calls, you probably need to reprioritize what you're doing and get that done,
Yes.
I would imagine.
Yep.
And and then in terms of, rapid response in general, I mean, you're talking about missile defense, so I can only imagine there's times when it's like, "Okay, we have a very time sensitive situation here." How do you talk about, collaborating across groups and communicating very quickly as a group worldwide. How do you handle these rapid fire situations and these high stakes calls in the moment?
Um, so I did 5 combat deployments in the Navy, and um, y- the most pivotal deployment I had was when I was an interrogator for SEAL Team 1 out of San Diego. We went to Ramadi, Iraq. I'm not a SEAL. I'm an intel officer that supported SEALs. Great group of leaders. Um, they have ways of mentally pulling out of you what it is that you are capable of doing. And they taught me how to be calm in the most dire of circumstances. And it's not something you read or study. You're in that environment, and you just have to
Mhm.
learn to do it mentally and physically. And so for the last, that was in 2008, 2009. And I've been operating that way ever since. And I like to be the person that's calm in the room, that's got a nice, calming tone of voice, and I just bring everyone together. Um, Typically, let's say for um, the missiles that were being launched into Israel from Iran, all over the news. Of course, we're involved in watching that play out. We're advising the president, the secretary of defense. We're advising General Whiting because we have the subject matter expertise in what those
Mhm.
systems are, what the systems we need to use to counteract that. Um, like everybody hears about the Patriot missile. So it's things like that that we make sure work, and whatever new improvements are implemented. Um, and we track that every single day. We have a 24-hour um, indication and warning watch floor that is well integrated with a lot of the other geographic combatant commands. And we watch those things happen, and we prepare ourselves to react to that. Um, but if you go in there guns ablazing and your head's on fire and you're way overexcited, it just causes more chaos. It puts people in stovepipes, and I can't afford that. So I have to go in there very calm, very rational, and people feed off of that. I've noticed they kind of mimic what I'm showing or displaying physically,
Yes.
um, and they're able to sit and think and talk and brainstorm and come up with new ideas or you know what have you for as long as I remain calm and I set that tone, I set it for the entire command. And I'm very, very self-aware of that.
And I think I want to highlight something you said. You can't afford to create heightened panic in your team. You can't afford that. I mean, you literally like can't afford that. I think that's good to hear for other people as well. If you're in a leadership position and there's an escalation or there's a crisis going on, the way you show up can absolutely change the tone of how your team responds. People take their cues from their leader. And so I think, I tried to be very conscious about that. And even if I was like, oh, this is not a good situation, I would consciously make myself speak slower and just move slower and just make sure I collected the information. And before, early in my career, I would panic and I would show that I was
Right.
panicking, and that had negative effect. And then when I learned to do what you're talking about, it had a much more positive effect and outcomes for the team. But obviously, what you do is a different scale. But I think that's a key thing for leaders to hear and to highlight.
Very, very key. Yep. I started out the same way when I first joined the Navy and had, as an intel officer, you get up and you brief a lot of people at a lot of senior pay grades. And I was nervous. I knew the material, but constantly I was thinking, well, what are they thinking about me? Is my uniform proper? Right? It's, those self sort of diagnosing scenarios that you put yourself through.
Absolutely.
But I don't do that anymore. I guess
Mm.
as I matured and got more experience and sought out a lot of mentorship from senior members of the military that I admired most. Um, and it's easy to find a mentor in the military. There's always somebody standing there ready to help you out and make you better, because they're going to be leaving soon. We rotate a lot. Every 3 years, you're rotating a new staff, a new command, a new commanding officer. So um, it's good practice to find those different mentors, um, different designators in the Navy. They don't have to be an intel guy. They can be a fighter pilot. She can be a ship captain. They can be a peer or even a subordinate. We have a lot of smart people that enlist in the military, and they have PhDs. They have IT degrees. They're CISSPs. They're PNP certified. We have a lot of smart talent in our armed forces, both military and civilian, and it would be a waste to not tap into that. So I do that quite a bit.
And given our previous conversation, mentorship is a high priority for you, and you talked a little bit about how that plays in the military. In your command, how do you foster that? Are there specific programs? Do you just encourage people like go find a mentor, go be a mentor? How does that come about in your command?
Well, specifically for this command, I held like a town hall. Um, I had everyone in the command sit in an auditorium. I got up, introduced myself. This was within my first 30 days. And I told them, I said, look, mentorship's a big deal for me. Um, we go on a lot of travel. We have a lot of commands that we go see. We're in Indo-PACOM. We're in the Pacific. We're in Europe. We're in the Atlantic. Um, Visiting all those commands, and we're putting names to faces so that we can build that relationship with those other commands. So it makes it harder for them to say no when we ask for something, right? Because now they have a face, they kind of know you, and it's like, well, okay, I met the guy or I met the gal. They're good people. They're doing their mission, what the general asked them to do. It's let's help them out type of deal. So I like to encourage that. And I told my C-suite leaders, so we call them J codes, they're directors. I said, if you guys are going TDY, I'm not going to approve it. If you go temporary travel around the globe, I won't approve it unless you're taking someone to mentor, whether it's an
Oh,
officer or a civilian employee. And everybody really liked that idea. And it sort of forced that mentorship in that way. And then it opened up the doors for, hey, sir, we went on this trip to Europe. When we get back, can you help me with, I'm thinking about doing this in my career. I'm thinking about changing this in my career, or I'm thinking about changing my career altogether and getting out of the military and doing something completely different. It's opened those doors, and I keep my door open, and I've got a lot of people that I mentor, and I have two staff members that I call senior mentor in the open. And everybody kind of like looks at me. They're like, sir, but you're the chief of staff. What, and I'm like, but these two guys are 06s. They're colonels, full birds. They've got 30 years of experience. I would be an idiot if I didn't ask them. They know so much, and they've got a different perspective on everything. One is in the Army, the other one's in the Air Force. I was in the Navy. So I get that joint perspective. I get their points of view from their services, and it helps you better. It makes the general's job easier because now we're connecting all of that tissue, if you will, across the globe so that we can do our job and help the other do their job better.
I love that approach. I wish more people saw it that way, where it's like you have all these resources, all these amazing, talented, skilled people around you. Why wouldn't you at least just have a conversation? I mean, the worst they can say is, no, I'm too busy this quarter or whatever. But so many people would love to help. They love to help and give back.
There,
So I
give
think
them that opportunity. I like to give people the opportunity to, um, I like to give them access and opportunity. Um, and I encourage them to get up there and fail. If you're going to give a brief and it's your first time briefing, it's okay. You're gonna fail, but you're gonna get better. I'm not gonna, penalize you or reprimand you for not having that type of um that attitude. If you're only gonna get better if you practice. So I encourage
yeah.
that. And so I call it opportunity and access. Give them the opportunity and they'll take it. You give them access to leadership, to brief. It only helps them, makes them better. That's how the SEAL team did it for me. They gave me that opportunity to fail, the opportunity to improve and get better, and here I am today. So, I that's something I want to give back to the people that are coming up behind me, because won't be a full time, a lifetime job for me. I still have plans of going to the senior executive services is my next step. So I need to teach someone.
Yeah. Well, thank
Mhm.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for what you do in the mentorship space, because it is so important, and it just sounds like from just what you said here, you've helped so many people. So thank you for that. And
It's good.
again, people listening, please do this yourselves. Encourage your teams, because it has great benefits and dividends for the people around you. So you're a supporter of mentorship. You're also a passionate advocate for mental
Yes,
health, and you speak publicly about this. So I was wondering, can you share your experiences in Walter Reed and what the main messages that you're wanting to convey when you speak to people about this?
absolutely. Um, so for sake of time and details, um, I joined in the Navy in 1998. In 1999 and 2000, we had several world issues. We had the Albanian separatist crisis that was occurring in now North Macedonia and Albania. It was almost a civil war there between um, Muslims and Greek, like Orthodox um, religious factions. The city of Skopje is divided by a river. Um, I went from that deployment. I went to Iraq right after that. I deployed to Jordan. So I did back to back to back to yeah, combat deployments. And you see things, you experience things that are not what an average person from anywhere in America is used to seeing or engaging in. And depending on where you're at and who you're with, who you're working for, what you do, you're constantly you're running at 110% of your emotional, physical, and mental ability. You don't sleep a lot. You don't eat well. You don't get enough exercise. So your body's constantly in this gauntlet, if you will, like a Spartan race. And you do that for 6 months, every day for 6 months. You don't get a day off. It's not like we stop fighting on the weekend. Um, I've done this deployment on two aircraft carriers, the John F. Kennedy and the Abraham Lincoln. Uh, I, I've done it with ground forces, and I've done it individually. Um, and you don't know how to turn it off when you get back. And it creates a lot of stress, um, both mentally and physically. And so my particular case, I noticed that when I was on deployments, I was fine mentally and physically. When I had that downtime and I wasn't on a deployment, that's when I start missing the team that I was with. Um, I'm I'm edgy, I'm agitated, short tempered. I was never violent. That was very like you and I wouldn't be having this conversation because I would think of it as like, what do you want to know about me? What are you trying to get? Right? Like, there's some sort of other angle um, that somebody's trying to do to me. And it was ruining my family. It was ruining my personal relationships with neighbors and friends. Um, and I was on the Navy staff, and the 4-star of the Navy that at that time was Admiral Richardson. And he created a task force called Task Force Resilient. And I got to go to that um, as one of the subject matter experts to figure out how can we do this better in the Navy? How can we get people back from combat, back from stressful deployments, and to have them integrate better and be more efficient and more lethal when they come. And so I was on that task force. My job was to interview agencies around the globe, law enforcement agencies. And the one thing I found out was that there is a lot of uh, psychological and mental health professional staffers on a lot of these agencies like NYPD, LAPD, Miami-Dade, Washington Metro. There's a staff. So when an officer is involved in a shooting, they get their gun, they take their badge, they go on this small hiatus, if you will, and they talk to mental health professionals because that's tragic. The trauma that you see
Right.
and you hear and harbor really eats you up, and that's what happened to me. While I was on that task force, I also was a patient at Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Bethesda, and I was in a group of 25 guys. Half the guys knew who I was from deployments, my time in the Navy. So we were personal friends, but I didn't tell anybody I was in it. And the admiral that was running the show at the time, Admiral Donegan, great man, he said, "Don't tell anybody. Just keep going. And at the end, we're going to outbrief everyone's project, and you go last." So I was the last guy to brief my project, and I heard all the stereotypes, right? Like, oh, I would never have this person fly a jet. This person could never go in combat. This person can't go on a ship. Um, So I was going through treatment and I was also hearing a lot of the stereotypes and the stigmas. And when I finally said, "Hey, I'm actually in the program now at Walter Reed, and I guarantee that the tools they've taught me make me more lethal, more self-aware, um, and more competent. I'm not held captive to those traumatic issues anymore. I know how to deal with them." And I started openly talking about it because that's what I needed. I just needed somebody that was a senior officer in the military that said, this is okay, and you're not gonna lose your career over it. You're not gonna lose your security clearance, if you know, your top secret clearance. You're not gonna lose, your time flying a jet." Um, and people were stunned. So I flew out to Columbus Air Force Base in Mississippi in September. And that's where all the new Air Force pilots go to train on their specific platforms. I briefed over 500 brand new pilots. Uh, I brought in the mental health doctor from that hospital, and I told them my story. I got to go into detail with them because I had all day, um, and it was remarkable. I have people that call me constantly, texting me saying, "Hey, JDUBB, I went to mental health. It's been great. Hey, JDUBB, I want to go to mental health, but I'm scared of this or that." They call me. My phone rings 24 hours a day, and I'll pick it up, and I'll talk to people. I just had a meeting 2 weeks ago with a guy here, and had lunch with him, and then walked to mental health with him just to get him in the door,
Oh,
and that was right. And I get these texts. I can show you later. It's like, "You changed my life. Like, thank you so much." And that's
wow.
what happened to me. And the Navy provided that to me. So I wanna give that back to everyone else that comes my way and says, "Hey, I wanna listen to what you have to say, JDub." I was scheduled to go to Florida State University, my alma mater, this month, but unfortunately, um, for the presidential transition, again, we're gonna be very busy, giving information to the incoming administration. So this month is gonna be horrible for me. Um, but next month, I'm trying to get out there for one of uh, their career discussion days, about government service, federal employment, things like that, where I also share my story of mental health. But I love it.
Wow. Well, thank yeah, thank you so much for what you do and also for sharing that story. I think it's really important for people to hear um, someone like you who like identified, addressed, and overcame, mental health challenges, which were more than understandable given what you had gone through,
Right.
and that you are successful, and that you are at the top of your field, and that you work with SEAL teams and you support generals who support the president of the United States. Like it doesn't mean you cannot be successful if you have something
Sure.
you're dealing with in your mental health.
Yep.
So I thank you very much for sharing that. I think
Yes,
it's really
ma'am.
important for people to hear.
And that goes into the corporate
Very
environment as well, right? There's a lot of stressful
sure.
situations when it comes to, you know, product development or quarterly earnings statements and things like that. Like that's a lot of pressure on a CEO. That's a lot of pressure on a chief of staff for a situation like that. Um, it's no different, right? Those are just stressful situations that your brain goes into and your body reacts to that, and it gets addicted to that chemical that releases in your brain when you're in a stressful situation. Um, but if you remain calm and you get help and you figure out how to recognize it when it happens, how to deal with it, you know, there's no stopping, and you help other people do it, and you know, it just keeps going and going and going.
And when I talk about this with people, I always try to equate it to um, we talk about our physical fitness a lot, especially in the US. We're kind of obsessed with like physical fitness and what's your training program
Yep.
and you're going for runs and workouts and eating and diets and all these things for our physical health, which is fantastic and great. But people just kind of either ignore the mental health or they put that in like an entirely different kind of tabooed stigma category, which I just find interesting. It's like it's the same. You're taking care of your health,
Yep.
and that includes your mental health and what's happening emotionally. And so I want people to say, I was talking to my therapist or I was talking to my counselor, I went to a mental health, group, whatever, just the same as like I went to the gym, I'm trying this new kind of eating program type of thing, because to me, it's like you're just taking care of yourself.
Right. And that's part of who I am as a chief of staff here. That's who I am as a leader across the board. Um, and it's it's something that I like, as you said, I will tell people that I told my command as a new chief of staff, if I give you time to go to the gym, because the military gives you an hour 3 days a week, go to the gym on company time. So if I give you time to do that, I give you time to go to church on Sundays, whatever your religion may be. I give you time off to go to your daughter's piano recital or dance recital. Why would I not give you time to go to mental health? I mean, it's right. It's a workout for your
Mm,
brain. I love that field. I
yeah.
love that community. Um, it's it's given me my life back, helped me figure out my purpose in life. My drive is much more intense for life and experiences and taking on hard challenges and trying to succeed in those. Um, which is why I
Yeah.
bought your book. If I had it, I call it my chief of staff Bible, and it's got red and green. I color coded the tabs on all these little things that were in the book about, you know, how to communicate with someone who might be, because I work with a guy that applied for my job but didn't get it. So there was some
Mm,
tension there, right? So I just went up to him and said, "Hey, you know, I heard you interviewed for the job. You know, I'm uh, that's a big step for you, you know, and it says a lot more about you as a professional that you're staying here, even though you know you didn't get that promotion, and you're still churning. And I'm looking for you to be more involved, more integrated, take up a bigger role in the company because that was your goal. And if that's still your goal in the future, I want to help you get there, whether I'm in that seat or not."
mm.
So, and that helped a lot. Our relationship changed on a dime, and my staff texts me all the time. I have 2 cell phones, which I think is kind of absurd, but, they're good. They go off the hook, and my leadership team has 24-hour access to me at any time. Um, but your book was amazing, and I'm glad because it gave me this opportunity to finally meet you and get on your podcast and share the success stories that I got from your book.
Well, I'm humbled and honored that I could offer a small piece of helpful information to you. So, absolutely privileged that you read the book. If someone is listening and they were hearing the part about mental health and they want to reach out to someone to engage with someone on that for themselves or someone they know, do you have any good resources for where people should go for that?
So there's a 1-800 number nationally, but what I deal with, because I'm in a lot of military communities, um, there's the Military One Source is a resource. Uh, the Navy Aid Society. There is the Soldiers and Sailors Relief Society. They're all phone numbers in the military community that you can um, have access to. Uh, Chaplains, doctors, commanders. We have it. It's almost a DoD regulation. You have stuff like that on a bulletin board for the entire command to see. Um, and I'll share, because I'm very proud of my kids. I have a 20-year-old now and a 14-year-old now, and they both go to mental health every Tuesday.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and
Okay.
they're some of the most resilient young ladies I've ever seen, and their mom and I want them to be that way. Um, and why not go to mental health? Because they lived seeing dad struggle. They saw me going to mental health and getting better and having a complete 180 change of my life. And they just called uh, it's the Family Care Center here in Colorado Springs. They are amazing. They just call them, got an appointment, and they go. Sometimes it's on teleconference, sometimes it's in person, but they spend an hour, and it's inexpensive. It's $35, a session to go. So if somebody's in this situation, they're not in military community, I would just say, go to a mental health clinic and pay for the session. Um, it'll change your life. Absolutely change your
Yeah,
life.
make it part of your regular routine. It's funny, but I'm very happy that your daughters are doing that. And I also think it's important to highlight some of the things you said. It made you better. So I think people at the bottom, when they're just, kind of crushed in on themselves and everything's dark and this is horrible, I can't get out of this. It can get better. And some of the things you've said is it made me more lethal. It made me sharper. It made me better. It made me stronger. And so it's not a sign of weakness. You're actually making yourself a more kind of optimized human. So I think
Exactly.
that's important to say as well. But JW, you've been so generous with your time and the information you shared. Just given everything we've spoken about, is there anything else you want people to know about what you and your command are doing? Anything about mentorship or anything else on mental health that you want to make sure to get across?
So for the first one, um, JIFIC IMD and US Space Command, they're in great hands. They are with some of the most brilliant 4-star generals I've ever met. So the nation is very secure there. Um, it's a great place to work. They're always hiring. If you're interested in government service in that capacity, I would encourage everybody to go to USA Jobs and look for US Space Command. Um, there are a ton of great opportunities to get involved. Uh, when it comes to mental health, you know, think of it as going to the gym. Like I said before, it's going to the gym for your brain. And it could be, you don't have to go there because you have an issue. You can go there just to make sure that whatever you're feeling, whatever you're experiencing, however you're processing your environment, whether it's normal or not. In most cases, it's a normal reaction that your body's going through. And and that takes a lot of pressure off of you as an individual, because now you're saying to yourself, man, I'm kind of crazy or I'm messed up. It's like, no, this is normal behavior. This is a normal reaction to stimulus in my environment. And now I know how to prepare for it and how to deal with it. Just like we prepare for, riding our bike and getting in an accident. You know, you're going to wear a helmet because you're going to get hit in the head. It's the same thing. Um, and then for mentorship, that is both up and down the chain of command. Don't I would encourage people not to wait. I didn't wait for the general to tell me what to do. I went in and did it and told him what I did. and ask for guidance. And it's, sir, this is what I did. You saw the email. This is my intent. This is what I'm doing. This is what I've done. If you have any feedback or want me to change anything, let me know. And every time I email it, it's JDUBB, keep going. Move out and draw fire, as an Army officer says, right? So, and I do that, and I encourage people to do that, whatever capacity they're in. Mentor up the chain. And I like to think that I mentored General Gainey at times. I wrote an op-ed for him just New Year's Eve that he really, I think, is going to help him when he testifies in front of Congress in the coming year. And just mentor down as well. And don't forget, your left and right, that a peer could be extremely knowledgeable, have that experience. You just don't know until you ask. Don't be shy or bashful. You want to make yourself better, and you want to make your command better, your company better, your staff better, going forward. It just makes you more productive. It makes you more efficient. It makes you more effective. It makes you more lethal. It makes you more profitable.
That's a great note to end on. And JDUBB, thank you once again for being on and sharing all that you have. And thank you for everything that you do.
Yes, ma'am. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity, and I look forward to chatting with you again.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.